Hello all of you. Now let's see rule number 32, that is the deeming fiction. Okay, so this is deemed value, and this rule is as per section 15(5). So we had seen in section 15 subsection 5 that government can prescribe method for valuation in certain supplies, of certain supplies. So that is this rule 32. Though it doesn't mention anywhere that this is as per section 15(5), but when you'll read this, you'll understand it. Okay. So let's start. Determination of value in respect of certain supplies. Notwithstanding anything contained in the provisions of this chapter, so this rule will override all the earlier rules that we have seen in the last lecture. Okay, rule 27 to 31A will not apply in these cases. So 32 has an overriding effect. Hence it is called as deemed valuation also. The value in respect of supply specified below shall, at the option of the supplier, now this is a debatable point, at the option of the supplier, be determined in the manner provided hereinafter. So this is a debatable question, that whether these points that we are going to see, the valuation methods that we are going to see in certain cases, are they mandatory or optional? Are they compulsory or optional? That is the point. So the rule itself says that at the option, means it says that all these points that we are going to see, the valuation methods, are optional to the assessee. If he wants to value like this, he can do it, otherwise he can do some other way. Okay, but go back to section 15 subsection 5. Come back to section 15(5). What it says: notwithstanding anything contained in subsection 1 or 4, the value of such supplies as may be notified by the government. So as may be notified by the government. So this is as per rule 32. Rule 32 notifies these supplies on the recommendation of the council, shall be determined in such manner as may be prescribed. Shall. Now here it uses the word shall. Shall means mandatory or compulsory. Means if the government prescribes these supplies under deemed valuation method, then you have to follow the deemed valuation method. There is no option that you can follow the normal, the transaction value, or otherwise the deemed value. Is there an option? No. Shall means mandatory. So under section 15 subsection 5, it says that this is mandatory. The method will be prescribed by the government, and that method of valuation will have to be followed. It shall be determined in such manner as may be prescribed. And how is it prescribed? Under rule 32. But rule 32 says, now come back to rule 32. Rule 32 says at the option. So now the question arises that whether this is optional method or is it mandatory. Different authors have different views on this, different legal experts have different views, but the strong view which I personally also support is that these methods are mandatory. They have to be followed, because section overrides the rule. So if whenever there is a contradiction between the rule and the section, this section will always prevail over the rule. It can never happen that rule overrides the section. It is always the section which overrides the rule. So applying that interpretation rule, we can say that though the word used are option, but this will have no meaning. It will have to be taken as mandatory. Right? It has to be taken as mandatory. But again I am telling you that this is my opinion, my personal opinion, and many other legal experts also have the same opinion. But there are many other opinions also regarding this. Means many other people who have a different opinion that this rule will be optional. So probably if you read this rule alone without linking it to section 15.5, then anyone will say that yes, it is optional. So that is a very preliminary interpretation. But if you take a deeper interpretation connecting it to section 15.5, then it has to be mandatory. Okay, so that is one legal issue which is involved, and probably government will clear this point in time to come. They will issue a circular or maybe a notification and clear their intent. Till that time, if the question comes in the exam, that if a question specifically comes in the exam, that should this rule be read as mandatory or optional, then you will write both the interpretations. Okay, you have to mention both in your answer. So start with the words that the interpretation is still contradictory. There are two opinions here of different legal experts, one like this, one like that. Great. So now let's start. Let's start with each case. So first case is money exchange. Exchange of money. The brokers who are there, the currency brokers, and banks also have the foreign currency cells which sell foreign currency. Cell means foreign currency department, you can say, which sells and buys the foreign currency, the foreign exchange, you can say. So for them, what will be the value of their service? Let's see. The value of supply of service in relation to purchase or sale of foreign currency, including money changing, shall be determined by the supplier of the service in the following manner. Now again, see here it says shall. So again it uses the word shall. So therefore there is no question of that option, because here it says shall. A. For a currency when exchanged from or to Indian rupees. Exchange from or to means this currency may be taken as a, say for example, dollar. Example USD. So USD can be exchanged from or to Indian rupees, means exchange can be both ways. The foreign exchange broker or the bank is exchanging dollars for rupees or exchanging rupees for dollars, as the case may be. Means I have dollars, Farooq, and I take it to bank and say that exchange dollars into rupees. Or I take money and I ask them, please, I want $1,000, I want to go to US. So I'll buy dollars or I may sell dollars. So the bank or the foreign exchange dealer or the money changer will be doing that. He will be exchanging dollars into rupees or rupees into dollars, as the case may be. The value shall be equal to the difference in the buying rate or the selling rate, depending upon what they are doing. They are buying or selling, as the case may be, and the RBI reference rate for that currency at that time multiplied by total number of units of currency. Very simple point. It's very simple. I'll tell you. First we'll read the whole thing and then I'll tell you in a very simple chart. Provided that in case where the Reserve Bank of India reference rate for a currency is not available, if RBI reference rate is not available, the value shall be 1% of the gross amount of Indian rupees provided or received by the person changing the money. The rupees, the INR component will take, and 1% of that total INR which is exchanged, dollar into rupees or rupees into dollars, as the case may be. 1%. Okay, so let's wait here and we'll discuss these 2 points first and then we'll see the second proviso. So let's see an example and understand the full logic of this valuation method. Okay. Now first I'll explain something in the background. There is a foreign exchange dealers. The common example are like Thomas Cook is there, and there are many other such dealers who exchange foreign currency either ways. Then there are money changers. Money changers only convert the foreign currency to Indian rupees. Now this you must have studied in section 10 of FEMA, if you have studied. Foreign Exchange Management Act. Have you studied? No? Then you are going to study in group 1. If you have already studied, you can recall. So in FEMA, there is registration section for these foreign exchange dealers and money changers. Dealer is a person who can exchange both ways. He can change dollars into rupees or rupees into dollars. And money changers can only convert the foreign currency into Indian rupees. So they are like hotels, 5-star hotels and big malls, etc. So they take registration as money changer. So if foreign customers come to their hotel, they will accept dollars and convert it into Indian rupees. That's it. So if you are registered as a money changer, then you can accept foreign currencies as a consideration. That's the advantage that they get. Okay. Then there are banks. Banks who also deal in foreign currency. Okay. Now how they deal? Let me tell you. So here is the RBI rate. RBI rate means the rate at which RBI will give you this currency or take currency from you. So RBI gives the exchange to these people, right? How will they get the foreign currency? They'll take it from RBI. So RBI gives it to them at a reference rate. So that is called as RBI reference rate. Okay, or you can say the RBI's rate of exchange of currency for that particular day, and it changes on day-to-day basis. And now if a customer comes to us, we are here, we are this exchange dealer or the money changer or the bank. If a customer comes to us and says that he wants to buy $10,000, he's going somewhere, so he wants to buy $10,000. So he'll come, the person will come, person comes to buy foreign currency, FC. So these persons will sell that foreign currency to him. He comes to buy means that this person is going to sell. So there is a sale quote. Quote means the price at which he offers to sell the foreign currency to this person. So this person is going to buy. So sale from the foreign exchange dealer's perspective and buy from the buyer's perspective, the person's perspective. Okay. Now I am using these words so that later on you don't get confused. Question may be twisted. CA Institute will twist the question. They will say a person comes to buy foreign currency, and then they will give two quotes of this person, the buy and the sell quote. So which quote you are going to apply for calculation? The sale quote. Person comes to buy, so you will not apply the buy quote, you will apply sell quote, because this person is going to sell and we have to calculate value for this person. So always remember, we have to see the transaction from the dealer's perspective and not the customer's perspective. So if customer is buying, means the dealer is selling. So we'll apply the sale quote. So this person has got a sale quote of rupees 76 per dollar. For $1 he'll charge 76 rupees. Okay. So if this person wants to buy $10,000, so he'll pay 10,000 into 76 to the foreign exchange dealer and take $10,000. Okay. Then there's another person who wants to sell. Person comes, he wants to sell foreign currency to the bank or the foreign exchange dealer. So for example, if Farooq Haq is earning money in foreign currency, I provide services outside India, so I get consideration in foreign exchange. So I get a lot of dollars. But I cannot keep those dollars in India with me. I have to sell it to the bank and convert it into rupees. So I'll go to this person, the bank or the dealer, and say that look, I've got these many dollars, convert it into Indian rupees. So the bank has got a buy quote for that. Buy quote. Buy quote will be, say for example, 74.5 per dollar. Means the bank is going to buy dollars at 74.5 and they are going to sell to anyone who wants it at 76. Obviously, who if you are doing business, you will obviously buy something for less and sell it for more, right? Then only you can survive in the business, otherwise you'll have to close down your, shut down your shop. So always it's buying at lesser price and selling at a higher price. So for the bank, it is doing business of buying and selling foreign currency. So they'll buy for less, sell for more. Okay, so there will be buy quote and there will be sell quote. Now, RBI reference rate will be somewhere in between this range, in the range of 74.5 to 76. So for example, RBI reference rate for the day is 75.1. So how this person decides his buy quote and sell quote? It will always be something less than, the buy quote will be less than RBI rate and the sale quote will be more than the RBI rate, because that is his earning. For example, if he buys dollars from a person at 74.5, then he is going to surrender them to RBI at 75.1. So his margin is this much, 0.6. 0.6 rupees means 60 paise per dollar is his margin, which he is earning. Or if he buys from RBI 75.1 and he wants to sell it to somebody, he'll sell at 76. So his earning is 0.9, means 90 paise per dollar. Okay, so that is a business, that is how it flows. Now what is the value for this person? What will be the value of the service? Value of the service will be this difference. So that is what is mentioned there. That value will be the difference between the buying rate and RBI reference rate, or RBI reference rate and the selling rate. So if this is the transaction happening, then this is the value. If this is the transaction, then this is the value. Got it? Very simple. So this is the value, or this is the value. The difference between the buying rate and RBI rate, or RBI rate and the selling rate. So let's take a few examples. Very, very simple point. So say for example, now you will always get two wordings, either bank is selling or buying, or the person is selling or buying. So first take the bank. So bank sells 2000 USD at 76.2. RBI reference rate is 74.8. So find out the value. So it's simple. The value will be this, the difference of the two. So what is the difference? 76 means 2000. 2000 is the units, $2,000 into 76.2 less 74.8. So 76.2 less 74.8 is equal to 1.4. 1.4 into 2000 is equal to rupees 2,800. So this is the value on which the GST will be charged. Okay, very simple point. Let's take another example. Bank buys 8,000 GBP, Great Britain pound, at 96 for 1 GBP, and the RBI reference rate is 97.8 for 1 GBP. So the value will be 8,000 units into 97.8 less 96, the difference. So 97.8 less 96, the difference is 1.8. 1.8 into 8,000 units is equal to rupees 14,400. Okay. So what we are doing, we are finding out the difference between our exchange rate and the RBI reference rate. So our buying rate, this is the buy quote. Okay, buys 8,000 GBP at 96 means this is the buy quote. So buy quote will always be less than RBI rate and sale quote will always be more than RBI rate. That is primary understanding. Okay, let's take a third example. Third example, I'll give all the things. RBI rate is 102 for which currency? Euro. Let's take euro now. But euro is not 102. Let's make it rupees 74 for 1 euro. Okay, RBI reference rate. And the person's buy quote, the bank or the foreign exchange dealer's buy quote is 72.6 and sell quote is 75.8. Okay, now let's do it. Now the question number 1 is that a person, Farooq Haq, sells 3,000 euros to foreign exchange dealer. Find out the value. Come on, do it. Let's try. I'll give you 2 minutes to solve. Farooq Haq sells 3,000 euros to foreign exchange dealer. What is the value? Come on, calculate. Come on. Do it. So out of these two quotes of 72.6 and 75.8, which one you are going to use? 75.8 is a right decision according to you, but not according to me. Farooq Haq sells. Now, is Farooq Haq important here? No. Otherwise, he is very important, huh? But not in this example. Farooq Haq is of no value. We have to find out the value for the dealer, foreign exchange dealer. So, foreign exchange dealer is selling or buying? He is buying. Foreign exchange dealer is buying. So, we will use the buy quote. So, Farooq Haq will sell 3,000 euros to FED, foreign exchange dealer, at what price? 72.6. Because his buy quote is 72.6. So, the value will be 3,000, the units of currency, into 74 minus 72.6. So 74 minus 72.6 is equal to 1.4 into 3000 is equal to rupees 4,200. So this becomes the value of the service. Simple. And suppose if it would have been given Farooq Haq buys 3,000 euros from FED, then we'll use the FED's sale quote of 75.8. So difference would be 75.8 and 74, that is 1.8. 1.8 into 3,000 will give the answer. So understood this point? This is the first point. Now this method is applicable only if the RBI rate is known on that day. Now if RBI's rate is not known, RBI reference rate not known, then what we'll do is we'll first calculate the total INR component of the exchange. For example, if it says Farooq Haq sells 6,000 some currency, whatever the currency may be, at 90.6 to foreign exchange dealer. Farooq Haq sells 6,000 some foreign currency at 90.6 to foreign exchange dealer. So what is the total INR value? The total INR value will be 6,000 into 90.6 is equal to 6,000 into 90.6 will give us 5,43,600 rupees. Okay, This must is the INR value of the whole transaction. But this whole transaction is not the value. The value for the foreign exchange dealer would be 1%. So value is equal to 1% of 543,600 is equal to 5,436. So it's simple. What basically it means? Now if you go into the logic, it means that the whole currency which is getting exchanged is not the revenue of the dealer. How much is the dealer earning out of it? Because here he takes something and here he gives something of a certain value. His income is the difference. His income is the difference. So therefore, the total value is not the value of the total money which is exchanged is not the value of his service. His value of service will be the difference between his rate and the RBI rate, if we know the difference. If we don't know the difference, because we don't know the RBI rate, then it is deemed to be 1% of the total money exchanged. It will be deemed that his earning is 1% out of the total. So that will become the value of his service, chargeable to tax. Now this 1% is the deemed revenue, not net income, deemed revenue, or you can say deemed commission. That is deemed to be his commission, that is deemed to be his margin, you can say, or deemed revenue. But his income will be less, because then he has to incur all the expenses of running his office, and if you deduct those expenses, then we will get his net income, which will then be chargeable to income tax. Okay, so this 1% is actually his gross earning. 1% is deemed to be his gross earning. Like Farooq charges 6,000 rupees for the DVD, so that is his gross earning. Okay, so it is like that. Very good. So any problem with this two examples? One example is, if we know the difference, RBI rate and our rate, will take the difference as the value. If we don't know RBI rate, then we'll have to assume that our income is 1%. The gross revenue, the gross earnings is 1% of the total INR component. Yes, very simple. Then come to the second proviso. Very interesting. What it says, see. Provided further that in case when neither of the currencies exchanged is Indian rupees, means a person has come down from Czechoslovakia. Kaun sa Vakia? Czechoslovakia. He comes down from Czechoslovakia and he exchanges some currency, maybe euros, into GBP or into dollars. So he doesn't want Indian currency. He is converting one foreign currency into another foreign currency. Then how to find out the value? So it says that is neither of the currency is rupees, means one foreign currency into another foreign currency. The value shall be equal to 1% of the lesser of the two amounts the person changing the money would have received by converting any of the two currencies into Indian rupees on that day at a reference rate provided by RBI. What does it say? Very simple. That if suppose you would have exchanged both the foreign currencies into Indian rupees at RBI reference rate of that day, like you converted your euros into dollars, but assume that you were to convert your euros into rupees and you also had to convert your dollars into rupees at RBI reference rate. So we'll convert both into rupees at RBI reference rate, then take whichever is less out of the two, and that one which is less, 1% of that is the value chargeable to GST. Understood? Let me explain. It's a very simple thing. For example, you converted 1000 euros into 1200 USD. Okay, so you are the foreign exchange dealer. A customer comes to you and he says that please convert my 1000 euros. So you gave him 1200 USDs against his 1000 euros. So you bought 1000 euros from him and you gave him 1200 USDs. So what we'll do is we'll convert both into INR by applying RBI reference rate. At RBI reference rate of both these currencies vis-a-vis INR. So suppose the RBI reference rate for euro is 102 per euro, and for USD, sorry, 102 no. For euros it is say 72 per euro and 76 for USD. If these are his rates, RBI rates 72 per 1 euro and 76 for 1 USD. So we'll multiply this. These are RBI rates, these are RBI reference rates, and get INR value. So here the INR value will be 72,000 and here INR value will be 1200 into 76 is equal to 91,200. Now you take the different, take whichever is less. So this is less, 72,000. So our value will be 1% of 72,000 is equal to 720. Okay, understood what we are doing? We are converting both the foreign currencies into Indian rupees at RBI reference rate. So we convert both the foreign currencies into Indian rupees at RBI reference rate, and then take whichever is less, and 1% of that is the value of service. Now you'll ask me, sir, what will happen if the RBI reference rate is not available? Then the section is silent. Section is not saying that what will you do if the RBI reference rate is not available of the two foreign currencies. So what we'll do? Then in that case, we'll have to apply some logic of our own because law is silent. So probably what we'll do is the foreign exchange dealer's rate we can take, whatever he is charging, and then take whichever is less and 1% of that. But this is what I will do if situation arises. Law is silent. So when law is silent, you can do as per your wish. So if you have some other formula, you apply that. Okay, and then the proviso says that provided also that a person supplying the service may exercise the option to ascertain the value in terms of clause B, which we are going to see here, for a financial year, and such option shall not be withdrawn during the remaining part of the financial year. So these people, the banks and the foreign exchange dealers or the money changer, have another option. So this is one option, and then they have another option in clause B. So they can either value their service under clause A or under clause B. So now let's see what is clause B. And this option they can exercise, and once they exercise, it will be fixed for the whole financial year. Means they have to exercise the option of A and B at the beginning of the financial year and then stick with it till the end of the financial year. Next year you can choose the other option, but not in between this year. Okay, so let's go to clause B then. What clause B says? At the option of the supplier. Now this option means option between A and B. This is the option. You can choose A or you can choose B. The value in relation to supply of foreign currency, including money changing, shall be deemed to be. Now let's see. Shall be deemed to be 1% of the gross amount of currency exchanged for an amount up to 1 lakh rupees, subject to minimum amount of 250. Now this 250 is per transaction. So you can just add it there. 250 per transaction. Now this valuation is applicable per transaction basis. Then 1,000.5% of gross amount of currency exchange for an amount exceeding 1 lakh up to 10 lakhs, and 5,500 and 1/10. 1/10 means 0.1% of the gross amount of currency exchange for an amount exceeding 10 lakhs, subject to a maximum amount of rupees 60,000 per transaction. Again underline 60,000 per transaction. Now what this means? 1%, 0.5% and 1/10, yani 0.1%. Okay. Now let's see how to calculate this. I'll tell you. It's again simple. If suppose we have exchanged $1,000 at 67 per USD. I have sold $1,000 to somebody at 67 per USD. So total INR that we have exchanged is 67,000. Okay, 67,000 is the total INR value of this transaction. So means somebody has brought 67,000 and we have sold him 1,000 USD at 67,000. Or it can be a reverse case. Somebody wants to sell his dollars to us, so we'll purchase from him at 67. Means 67 can be a sale quote or it can be a buy quote. Okay, it can be anything. It can be a sale or it can be a buy quote. So if the INR exchange is 67,000, either I have given you 67,000 or I have received 67,000 from you. The value will be calculated at, now as you can see, the amount exchange is less than 1 lakh, so value will be 1% of 67,000 is equal to 670. Now as it is more than 250, that's fine. So 670 will be the value. But take another example. Somebody buys 200 USDs only at 69.30 per USD. So total INR value of the transaction will be 200 into 69.30. That is 13,860. So value in that case would be 1% of 13,860 because it is less than 1 lakh. So it will be very less, 138.60. So in that case, the government says that no, we will not accept a value of anything less than 250 per transaction. So this will be ignored and the value shall be deemed to be 250 per transaction. Then take another example. Somebody exchanges 5,000 USD at 77.5. So total INR value would be 5,000 into 77.5, 3,87,500. Means the total INR value which is exchanged is more than 1 lakh but less than 10 lakhs. It is in that range. So how will the value be calculated? The value will be first 1 lakh into 1%. So that will give me 1,000. And then whatever is the amount above 1 lakh, that is 2,87,500. So that 2,87,500 will be calculated at 0.5%, half percent, or half means 0.5%. So 287,500 into 0.5% is 1437.5. So total 2,437.5. This is the total value. Right? Very simple calculations. And now suppose there is a transaction of 75,000 USD at 76.8. So total INR value will be 75,000 into 76.8 is 57,60,000. So it is beyond 10 lakhs. So if the total INR value exchanged is beyond 10 lakhs, then what we'll do? Then we'll calculate first 1 lakh. Okay, so value will be calculated in 3 steps. If you want to do slab wise, now I am telling you slab wise, so that you don't have to mug up anything. First 1 lakh into 1%, that gives me 1,000. Then next 9 lakhs, that is from 1 lakh to 10 lakh, that's slab of 1 lakh to 10 lakh. First 1 lakh at 1%, then 1 to 10 means 9 lakh at 0.5%. This will give me 4,500. And then whatever is beyond 10 lakhs. So here we have reached 10. Now whatever is beyond 10 lakhs, total is 5760. If you deduct 10 lakhs from that, then you are left with 47,60,000. So the balance 47,60,000 will be calculated at 0.1%, 0.10 you can say. It means the same, 0.1%. So let's do it. 47,60,000 into 0.1%, 4,760. So if you add up, it comes to 10,260. This is the total value of the transaction. Then you calculate tax on that. Done. Very good. And now let's take a very high figure. Very high figure. So let's do it. $8 lakh. 8 lakh. Is it enough? Let's increase it further. Let's do it as $12 lakh. Exchanged at rupees 76.5 per dollar. So total INR value comes to, I hope it fits in the calculator, 12 lakhs into 76.5. Nine crores 18 lakhs. Whew. Now how do we find out the value? Simple. First 1 lakh will be calculated at 1%. So this gives me 1,000. Then 9 lakhs at 0.5%, that is half percent, that gives us 4,500. So if you just remember this table, or you can say like we do in income tax, slab rates of tax. So this you consider as the slab rates of tax. 1% for first 1 lakh, then 0.5% for next 9 lakhs, that is 1 to 10, and beyond 10 at 0.1%. So then you don't have to mug up these figures. Okay. So if I deduct 10 lakhs, then the remaining amount is 9 crores and 8 lakhs. Like, right? 9 crores and 8 lakhs into 0.1%. 9 crores 8 lakhs into 0.1% gives me 90,800. So total is 90,800 plus 1,000 and 4,500. Total comes to 96,300. But there is a cap. The cap is 60,000. So if the actual value by this method comes to more than 60,000 for one transaction, we will limit it to 60,000. So this will be restricted or limited, you can say. It can be called as restricted also. Restricted is a better word, so let's use that. So this is the total value first of all, but then it will be restricted to 60,000. So for one transaction the value cannot be less than 250 and the value cannot be more than 60,000. So minimum is 250 per transaction, maximum is 60,000 per transaction. So if the actual calculation is more than 60,000, we will restrict it to 60,000. Understood? So these are the two methods. Alternatively, you can follow any one. Like I'll give you again money exchange. Let's understand it again. Option 1, the difference option. So in that you have got different this thing. The first is foreign currency and INR. The conversion is between one foreign currency and INR, either this way or that way. So the value is difference between our exchange rate and the RBI rate. So I will write it as actual. Actual means the rate at which we have actually exchanged, actual rate, and RBI rate. Okay, the difference basically. So sometimes this is less and this is more, sometimes this is less and this is more. So you don't calculate always as minus figure. You will not get minus figure. It will be the difference basically. Second, if RBI rate not known, then value is equal to 1% of INR exchanged. And third, foreign currency into another foreign currency. Then what we do is we calculate first the INR values of both the foreign currencies. So INR of FC1, INR of FC2 at RBI rates, and the value is equal to 1% of lesser. First you calculate both, then whichever is less you take and of that 1%. So this is one way of calculation. The second way is, the option 2 is this slab method of valuation. So in slab method what you do is, first 1 lakh INR value exchanged and value. So first 1 lakh, 1%, next 9 lakhs if there is any, 0.5%, and balance if any 0.1%, and below that you write down minimum 250 per transaction and maximum 60,000 per transaction. Okay, now you can follow any one of the two methods, and whichever you exercise, that will be applicable for the whole year, for one complete year. Next financial year you can change your method, right? So take it down, pause and take it down, then we'll continue further. Then coming to the next one. Next one is the value of supply of services in relation to booking of tickets. Booking of tickets by travel by air provided by an air travel agent. Now you have to remember this, air travel agent. If I want to travel to New York, I go to a travel agent. They are online, offline, both kinds of travel agents are there, who receive commission from the airlines. They receive commission from airlines. So they book us, they book a ticket for us. They take money from us and book the ticket and give the ticket to us. In return, they get commission from the airlines. So they have to pay tax on the commission that they receive from the airlines. Now normally they don't know how much commission they are going to receive, because it varies from airline to airline and from time to time and from the route that they have booked and many other factors. So airlines don't give a fixed commission, they give very varied commission rates on different tickets. Therefore it's difficult for them to calculate the tax at this point of time when they have booked the ticket. So therefore the government has given them an alternative method under this section. I mean to see the rules. So what this rule says, that the air travel agent can pay tax on deemed value basis. And what will be the deemed value? Means what will be the deemed value of commission? That is how much commission they have earned, in simple words. So that is given there. Very simple. Shall be deemed to be an amount calculated at the rate of 5% of the basic fare. Basic fare means the ticket cost, excluding the airport taxes and all. Basic fare which goes to the airline. 5% of basic fare. In case of domestic bookings, means India to India booking, and at the rate of 10% of the basic fare in case of international bookings of passage for travel by air. And what do you mean by basic fare? So that is also given. The expression basic fare means that part of the airfare on which commission is normally paid to the air travel agent by the airlines. That is the amount which goes to the airline, excluding those airport taxes and all. So suppose my ticket cost is say 7,000, out of that say 1,000 or 1,500 may go to the airport taxes. So the remaining part goes to the airline. So that is called as basic fare. So on that basic fare, you have to calculate 5% or 10% respectively. Means in very simple words, if suppose the basic fare is, okay, I'll give you the formula. So basically value means commission received by the air travel agent. So commission of agent is equal to, or you can say the deemed commission is equal to fare into 5% or 10%. It's as simple as that. Because normally they would receive commission and then they would pay tax, but that is difficult to ascertain. So government says, okay, if you have booked an international ticket, we will deem that your commission is 10%, and if you have booked a domestic ticket, Nagpur, Bombay, Pune and all, then you are deemed to have earned 5% commission. So domestic commission estimated at 5%, international commission estimated at 10%. Simple. And then you pay the tax accordingly. So this becomes the value. This is not tax, this is value. On this value you pay the tax, whatever tax rate is applicable to you, right? So it's very simple. I don't think that you will need to write anything here, because in the analysis part in the next lecture we are going to see it in detail. Examples are given there, very simple examples. And one point I like to tell you here, what if an air travel agent has booked a ticket for Farookhak from Mumbai to Guwahati, northeastern state. An air travel agent has booked my ticket from Mumbai to Guwahati. What will be the tax in that case? Now I know that most of you are thinking that, sir, this is exempt. Yeah, this is exempt, so no tax because I am traveling to Guwahati. Mistake. You are wrong. Now this point I had told you even in exemption, while we were studying that exemption, airline which is providing me transport service is exempt, but not the agent. Remember this point. Agent giving me the service of agency is taxable. He is taxable. The commission part of the agent is taxable. The airline ticket, which is also taxable in normal course, that will be exempt if my travel is to Bagdogra Airport, Sikkim, and the 7 northeastern states. Okay, so airline travel is exempt, but commission is taxable. So don't mix the two. Okay, then let's go to the next one. Next one is also a simple one, but you have to understand a little bit here. It's more of understanding. Yeah, and this is about life insurance business. Value of supply of service in relation to life insurance business shall be. Now before we read these 3 points, let me tell you a little bit about life insurance. Now, I hope that you know about life insurance, but still, life insurance, the companies which are offering life insurance, I mean to say, are giving 2 types of policies. One, which is hardcore insurance policy, means there is no investment involved there. You pay the amount of premium and you pay it every year till the time you are insured, and you will get money only if you die. So dying is important there. Important, I mean to say necessary. If a person dies, then only the amount is received. If he survives the policy period, then he will receive nothing, because there is no investment made. So those are called as term insurance policies. Term insurance, TERM, term insurance policies. You get the amount only in case of death, but nothing in case you survive. The second policy is called as the investment policy, means it is insurance plus investment policy. So there the premium is much higher, obviously, because part of the premium is the insurance charge and the remaining part is the investment amount. So say for example, in the normal investment policy, if the premium is say 1 lakh per annum, out of 1 lakh, maybe 20-30,000 will be deducted by the insurance company as insurance charge. So some companies call it as insurance charge, some company may call it as mortality charge or by other name. That is the amount that they deduct, and it goes to the insurance company as their consideration for giving you the insurance. Okay, so that is consideration of the insurance company for giving you the insurance service. The remaining part, so if out of 1 lakh say 20,000 goes as mortality charge, the remaining 80,000 is invested in units in your name. So it can be a ULIP policy, unit linked insurance policy, or guaranteed insurance policy, or whatever. So that amount will go as investment. So 20,000 towards insurance charge and the balance in investment. And if you compare the same policy with the term policy, so in term policy they will charge only 20,000 from you for the same cover, for the same insurance cover, because they are charging only the insurance charge. There is no investment. So that 80,000 is missing. There will be only 20,000 insurance charge. That's it. So that goes to insurance company. Now, the important point. The investment amount is not chargeable to GST. Now the logic. The investment amount is not chargeable to GST. So what is chargeable to GST? Only the insurance charges, the consideration which the insurance company takes to provide us insurance. Only that much will be chargeable to GST and not the investment amount. So in the first policy, that is a term policy, a pure insurance policy. Pure insurance policy, only the term insurance. The whole premium is insurance charge. So therefore the whole premium is chargeable to tax. But in the investment policy, if they charge 1 lakh as premium, part of it is insurance charge and part of it is investment. So only the part which is insurance charge will be liable to GST, and the other part which is of investment is not liable to GST. So now the question arises, how will you ascertain the proportion? That is the main question which is dealt here. What is the proportion? Total premium is 1 lakh. So out of total premium, how much is insurance charge and how much is investment? That is the main deciding factor. Okay. So how to determine that? Let's see. It is given here. So this deeming fiction which is there is basically of that division, that how much is insurance, how much is investment. That is the deeming fiction. So let's see now. Now you can understand. So first point says the gross premium. This is the gross premium, right? 1 lakh. Charged from a policyholder reduced by the amount allocated for investment. So if this is known, how will it be known? So see further. Or savings on behalf of the policyholder if such an amount is intimated to the policyholder at the time of supply of service. So if the insurance company, whether LIC, the national one or the private ones, if when I pay the premium to them, if they give me the receipt, obviously they'll give receipt. What I'm saying is if they mention the division separately. So if they mention it there, the total premium received 1 lakh, out of which 20,000 is insurance charge and balance 80,000 is investment amount. So then we know that 20,000 is the insurance charge. So we will charge tax on that 20,000. Okay. So we'll take gross amount of premium less the investment amount. So 80,000 goes into investment. So 1 lakh minus 80,000 will give us that 20,000. So 20,000 will be the value chargeable to tax. Okay. Simple. But when will this be possible? Only when the insurance company intimates that division, that segregation. Intimates means in the receipt, insurance receipt that we get. Okay. Number 2. In case of single premium annuity policies other than clause A. Okay, let me first tell you about C. Okay, forget this B in between. Let's come to C first, so that we logically follow the sequence. So logical sequence is A, then C, then B. Okay, so let's come down to C first. C says in other cases. Other cases means where this intimation is not given, where the insurance company has not intimated the two amounts separately. So if they have given just the gross premium receipt that we have received 1 lakh premium from you, and they don't divide that investment and insurance charge, then what will happen? Then it says 25% of the premium, that is a gross premium, means of 1 lakh, 25% means 25,000. Charged from the policyholder in the first year and 12.5% of the premium charged from the policyholder in subsequent years. So this is the deemed insurance charge, the deemed value. 25% for the first year premium. First year premium means when the customer takes an insurance policy. So whenever you take an insurance policy, the premium that you pay for the first year is called as the first year premium. So from the first year premium, the estimation will be 25%, means 25% will be the insurance charge, deeming fiction. And the balance 75 is investment, so let it go. So 75% let go, 25% value taxable. And then for the second year premium, because your policy continues for a number of years, suppose you have taken a policy for 20 years, so you are going to pay premium for 20 years. So from the first year's premium, 25% will be considered as taxable, and from second year's premium, then third year's premium, then fourth year's premium, and so on and so forth, you are going to pay for 20 years. So from second till end, 12.5% of the gross premium will be deemed to be the insurance charge, chargeable to GST. So first year's premium 25%, subsequent years 12.5%. Clear? Very simple. But now there are some policies which are single premium policies. The policies of 20 years. But you don't pay premium in 20 years. Sometimes you pay premium in 10 years also. But this is not even 10 years. This is single premium policy. Single premium. Means you pay only one premium and your life is insured for some number of years. the contracted number of years. So in that case, when the policy is a single premium policy, then the value will be estimated at 10% of the single premium charge from the policyholder. Means 10% is deemed to be the insurance charge. Balance 90% is deemed to be investment. So if it's a regular premium means number of years of premium 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, 50, then 25 and 12 and a half. This combination will go first year 25, subsequent years, whether it is 1 year or 5 years or 10 years, subsequent years means minimum insurance should be of 2 years, then it will come in C. First year and the second year, or first, second, third, or first, second, third, fourth, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, 9, 10, and so on and so forth. 25 and 12 and a half. If it's a single premium policy, then 10%, straight away 10%. Now this 10% will apply in which case? Other than A. So other than A means where the amount is intimated separately. So if that is a separate intimation, then we will follow that rule. Whatever is the segregated amount for insurance charge, that will be taxable. But if you have not mentioned it separately, then this rule will apply. Okay. And the proviso says that nothing contained in this sub-rule shall apply, means this whole sub-rule is not applicable where the entire premium paid by the policyholder is only towards risk cover in life insurance. So this is called as the term plan. So in term plan, we will not divide. In that case, the whole premium is taxable. Entire premium is taxable. Entire premium is taxable because there is no investment component into it. As there is no investment component, so we have to reduce nothing. The complete premium is chargeable to tax. Okay, understood? Very good. Now let's make a small chart for this so that you remember for a long time to come. Life insurance. Okay, so one is pure insurance, also called as term insurance. Okay, in this case what will happen? Whole premium, that is a gross premium, is taxable. Second is insurance plus investment plan. Okay, now in this case, if premium is divided separately into insurance charge and the investment amount, then what we'll do, whether it is a single premium policy or multiple premium policies, if they are mentioned separately, separate mention of insurance charge and investment, then taxable value will be the insurance charge. Whatever is the insurance charge is taxable. So total premium less investment. So what you are left with? The insurance charge. So insurance charge will be taxable. And if not mentioned separately, if not mentioned means not intimated separately, then if it's a single premium policy, single PP in a single premium policy, or multiple premium policy, there can be two policies, multiple PP. Single PP, multiple PP. If it's a single premium policy, then the value will be estimated at 10% of gross premium. 10% is the taxable value. If it's a multiple premium policy, then first year premium you will estimate 25%. First year premium 25% of gross premium, and subsequent years will be 12.5% of gross premium. Ha! Understood? Simple. Note it down. Press the pause button and take it down. So then let's take some examples on this. For example, that Sun Life Insurance Company. Sun Life Insurance Company. This is the best name that we can have. You will live till the time the sun rises, and sun is going to rise for billions of years. So you'll have a long life. Okay, so Sun Life Insurance Company has sold a policy to Mr. Mehta for rupees 10 crores, means the policy amount is 10 crores. Premium charged is 26 lakhs. Okay, first year. So this is the year in which the policy is sold to Mr. Mehta of 10 crores, and premium per annum is going to be 26 lakhs for 10 years. So he has to pay 10 years premium, 26 lakhs. Great. And the policy may be of 40 years, 50 years, whatever the case may be. So is it a single premium policy or multiple premium? Multiple premium. Have they mentioned the amount separately, the investment amount and the insurance charge? No. So then the value will be deemed to be, since it's a first year premium, value will be deemed to be 25% of 26 lakhs is equal to 26 into 25%, 6.5 lakhs. Okay. Now in the same question, if I say what if it is single premium policy? What if it is a single premium policy? Means you just have to pay 26 lakhs and then forget. Achha, let's take separate examples, because otherwise you will get confused. Let's take a new example. Single premium policy given to Mr. Mohta for 5 crores. Mohta is a big businessman. He takes a single premium policy for 5 years. For 5 crores. And the single premium, only one premium is there. And that premium is 1.2 crores. So you have to just pay 1.2 crores right now, and then the policy will continue for a number of years. It may be for 10 years, 20 years, whatever you have fixed. So you don't have to pay any premium anytime again, just one single premium. So then, and again it is investment plan that we are not writing, that is assumed. That is assumed because we are talking about this. So it is assumed that it is a risk cum investment plan. Okay. If you want to write, you can write down. Otherwise, after a few days, when you will revise, so you will think that where is it written that this is risk and investment plan. So this is assumption which we are taking inherently. Okay. If you want, you can write down. So here the value will be how much? 10% of 1.2 crores is equal to 12 lakhs. Then apply the rate of tax and calculate the GST. So this is single premium policy. Then third example, let's say, now let me write down here, risk plus investment policy was given to Mr. Dheeraj 2 years back. Premium charged is 60,000. premium charge is 60,000 per annum. So it's a long-term policy for 12 years. So he has to pay the premium for 12 years. So it is a multiple premium policy, but the policy was given 2 years back. So the premium that is charged right now in this year's premium of 60,000 is subsequent year's premium. So the value will be 12.5% of 60,000, the gross premium. Because this is not the first year of this policy, this is the third year of the policy, because it was given 2 years back. So 2 years have already gone. So this is now the third year premium. So if this is a third year premium, the value will be 12.5% of 60,000. That will be 60,000 into 12.5%, 7,500. Understood? Very good. Very simple examples. And suppose if it's a pure risk plan, pure risk policy given to Mr. Farooq, for 10 crores. So the policy is of 10 crores and the premium charged is 56,000 per annum for 12 years. So for 12 years it's a policy of 12 years and I have to pay 56,000 per annum as premium. But this is a pure risk policy. So as it is a pure risk policy, will we divide it 25%, 30%, 10%? No. The whole amount is taxable. So value would be full 56,000. Whether this is a single premium policy or whether it is a multiple premium policy will make no difference. It will always be taken as 56,000 full, because it is pure risk cover. Okay. So that's how you'll have to calculate if a question comes. Then comes subsection 5. Interesting one. Where a taxable supply is provided by a person dealing in buying and selling of second-hand goods. So we are talking about the second-hand dealer. He might be selling second-hand cars, second-hand refrigerators and white goods, and second-hand books and second-hand so many things. There are so many things which people sell second-hand in India. It's a major hub for second-hand goods. That is, used goods as such or after such minor processing which does not change the nature of the goods. Means he is not reproducing the goods, because there is a recycling industry also. So we are not talking about recycling industry. Like in plastic, there is a recycling industry which brings the old plastic bottles and materials and all old plastic which is already sold once, and now they bring it back as scrap, melt it down, clean it and remanufacture goods out of it. So that will not be covered by this clause. Okay, that will not be covered here. Here we are talking about a person who is just bringing some old items and selling it off, second-hand market, maybe with some minor changes here and there. Like in case of motor car industry, we'll buy old motor cars, we will do denting, painting, some repair maintenance required here and there, and then we will sell it as refurbished goods. Those are called as refurbished, which require minor processing, not full remanufacturing. So they are at the most called as refurbished, not remanufactured. Okay, so they will come here. Refurbished goods will come here. So what we are doing, we are buying second hand and then selling it off as it is without any processing or maybe some minor processing which do not change the nature of the goods. And where no input tax credit has been availed, we are not taking any input tax credit also on the purchase of these goods. The value of supply shall be the difference between the selling price and the purchase price. That is, only the value addition will be charged to tax. Only the value addition. Means value will be only the value added. That is my sale price minus my purchase price. So if I buy this pen in second hand at 6,000 and then after some polishing and a little bit of here and there I sell it at 7,200. So that 1,200 will be the value of service. The difference will be the value of service, not the whole thing. Now what logic has been applied by the government here? Let me explain you. The logic is simple. In any case, how do we charge GST? How do we calculate GST? We first calculate GST on the full sale price, right? And then we deduct the GST on purchase price. So suppose I am buying something at say 1,000, there is a GST on that of say 100. So what I do, I take ITC and then I sell, means supply. Let's use the word supply. So first I buy, I purchase and then supply. Supply is for say 1,700. So I'll calculate GST on this 1,700. If the rate is same, then it will come to 170. But are we going to pay 170 to government? No, we are going to set off. So we take ITC, input tax credit, of this 100 and set it off here. So we are liable to pay only 70 rupees to the government, right? It's like that. This is a normal course. Now in second hand industry what happens is that most of the second hand purchases take place from the general unorganized market. So they don't charge GST. So we don't get GST invoices. We go home to home and collect all the old boxes, the tin boxes and the plastic guns and this and that and so on and so forth, lots of things. So we don't get the GST invoices. That means that if we sell at 1,700, we would be liable to pay full 170 because there is no GST here and we don't purchase from industry. If you buy from industry, then yes, we'll get the invoice which will mention GST. But if you guys buy from local public, you are not going to get this GST invoice. Means no credit. No credit means you will have to pay full 170. So that becomes very costly because the margins in second hand goods are very less. So sometime it may happen that your margin is less. You are buying at 1,000, you are selling at 1,050 and you are paying 105 as GST. So how does it make sense? Doesn't make sense. So therefore the government has given this concession to them that forget this ITC route, forget the route. You just calculate this difference. What is the difference here? 700. 700 is my value addition. Calculate tax on directly 700. So if the rate is say 10%, so tax on 700 will be 70, which will actually be the same. See, even if you go by the normal route, it will be same. If you come here, it will be simpler. It will be simpler and same. So the amount will be same. The procedures will be much simpler. So that's the advantage. Government doesn't lose anything, but you gain a lot in terms of you will save the cost of accounting and all. Right? So this is for second hand. The difference in the sale price and purchase price is the deemed value. So 700 will be deemed to be the value of your service. Okay. So the value will be value added, means sale price minus purchase price. But what if the sale price is less than the purchase price? A second hand dealer is there. He buys something second hand at maybe 2,000 rupees. But then after many years he is able to sell it off only at 1,600. Because every time it will not happen that he will be able to sell at a higher price. Sometimes it may be reverse also. That he buys at a higher price and sells at a lower price. Then will the value be negative? Means is there a concept of set off in GST? That this item sold at negative, so he'll set it off against the other item which has been sold for a positive value? No, that cannot happen. There is no concept of set off of loss. Hence, it is given here at the last that where the value of such supply is negative, where the value of such supply is negative, it shall be ignored. Means loss has to be ignored. Means it will be considered as 0. Means no GST. So negative value means no GST. So if somebody buys, second-hand dealer is there, he buys something at 2000 and then sells it at 1500, that is incurring a loss of 500, there will be no GST. Okay, it will be ignored, the loss will be ignored, means no GST. But no set off, right on, but no set off. You cannot set off this loss against the profit of any other item that you might have sold. Okay, so that is sub rule 5. And then there is a proviso. Now what the proviso says, see, very interesting. Proviso says that purchase value of goods repossessed from a defaulting borrower. Means here we are talking about banks. So write down banks. This is applicable basically to banks, the proviso. The valuation will be done in the same way. First let me tell you what banks do. They give loan, like for example car loan. They give car loan to you, and then if you make a default in repayment of loan, maybe from the beginning, maybe after a few months, maybe after a few years, if you start making a default, the bank will repossess those goods. They will take away your car and then sell it off in the market. So in that case the valuation will remain same. Value will be sale price minus the purchase value, the purchase price. But then what is the purchase price? What is this purchase price? Full purchase price, original? What do you mean by purchase price? For bank, what do you mean by purchase price? For a second-hand dealer, it's very simple. Second-hand dealer buys goods at 2000, sells at 2200. He buys and sells, second-hand. But bank is not buying, it is selling. It is repossessing and then selling. So the question is that in case of repossession, what is the purchase price? So for that the proviso is given. What is the purchase price of goods which are repossessed by bank? So let's see. So it says goods repossessed from a defaulting borrower who is not a registered dealer. Who is not registered means you guys, individuals who buy car by taking a loan and then you make a default, bank will repossess. For the purpose of recovery of loan or debt shall be deemed to be the purchase price. Now see, purchase price of such goods by the defaulting borrower means the original price at which you purchased the car. So you bought a car for 50 lakhs, Mercedes Benz. So that 50 lakhs. Reduced by 5 percentage points, 5% for every quarter or part thereof, between the date of purchase and the date of disposal by the bank. Disposal by you nahi, disposal by person nahi, disposal by, here person means bank, person making such repossession. So making repossession is bank. So let's understand this point. Okay, let's come down to a clear page. I'll explain it to you. Here is the bank. It gave loan of 50 lakhs to VM, Vijay Mallya, to buy a car. Okay. Okay, to buy a car. Now he buys a car. Car bought for on 15th October 2018 for 58 lakhs. So obviously car cost is much higher. Bank will not give you 100% finance, they give you something less. So 8 lakhs you have to deposit yourself and buy the car. Now he buys it on 15th of October 2018. Then he makes defaults in repayment of loan and the bank repossesses the car on 10th of when? June 2019. After repossession, bank sells the car, that is called as disposal, on 11th March 20. Okay, 11th March 20, the bank finally disposes of the car for rupees 32 lakhs. So now we have to find out the value. Okay, so this question will come in the exam. They will give you all the facts and now find out the value on which GST is to be applied. So let's do it. So what we have to do is we have to see this difference. 15th October 18 is the date of purchase. From there we have to take 11th of March 2020, that is disposal of the car by the bank. So date when the person purchases the car up to the date when it is disposed of. Now what we have to do is find out the quarters. Quarters stands as a 3 months period of a year. So quarters are April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March. Now if you see this 15th of October, so it is falling within the quarter of July, August, October, November, December quarter. October, November, December quarter of 2018. So this is one quarter, Q1. This is October to December 18. Then there will be next quarter, January, February, March 19. Then there will be a quarter, April, May, June 19. Then July, August, September 19. Then September, October, November, December 19. And then January, February, March of 20. So this date falls in this quarter, so we have to take part also. So this is part, means deemed to be 1. Then these are the complete quarters, and then the final date of disposal falls in January, February, March of 2020 quarter. Now say how many quarters are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In all there are 6 quarters. 6 quarters. Quarters will always be taken as the fixed period of 3 months. That is defined under the GST law. So 15th October doesn't mean that 15th October to 15 November, December, January means 15th October to 15 Jan 1 quarter. Not like that. You have to take 3 months period. April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March. These are the quarters. So if this date falls within 1 quarter, that will be taken as 1 quarter. And this date falls in 1 quarter, that will also be taken as 1 quarter. And then in between. Okay, understood how to calculate quarters? 6 quarters. Now what we are going to do is 6 quarters into 5% per quarter. So 6 into 5 means 30. So we are going to reduce this original cost of the car by 30%. So less 30%. That is for 6 quarters. So 58 lakhs into 30% less. If we less it, it comes down to 40,60,000. This 40,60,000 is the purchase price by the bank, and it is able to sell it at 32, means at a loss. If it's a loss, ignore it. Ignore it. But now let's change the example. It might have been sold at 42 lakhs. So if it is for 42 lakhs, then yes, 42 lakh sale price minus 40,60,000. So there will be a value of 1,40,000. So then you compare this with this. Okay. So first calculate purchase price. How do you calculate purchase price? Original purchase price by the person of the car, of that asset, less 5% per quarter of use. 5% per quarter. From the date of purchase of the car by the borrower and ending on the date of disposal by the bank. So first you calculate the quarters, then 5% per quarter you deduct from the purchase price. So balance is the purchase price. Then compare it with the sale price. So the difference is value. So if the sale price is 32, then value will be nil. We will not take loss. The value will be nil. But if the sale price is 42, then yes, there will be a value of how much? 1,40,000. This will be the value for charging GST. Understood? Great. You want to take down the example, you can do so. And then when you are done, come back. The next is a very simple one, point number 6. The value of token, voucher, coupon, stamp, all those things that we have seen in time of supply also. Right? Okay, the time of supply will be either the date when the voucher was issued, or if it's identified goods, and if the goods are not identified, then at the time of redemption. Right? Now the question is, what is the value? So value of the voucher is the amount that will be adjustable against the purchase of the next item. The adjustable amount, that is the value of the voucher. So it says, other than postage stamps are not covered here, which is redeemable against supply of goods or service or both, shall be equal to the money value of the goods or service or both redeemable against such token, voucher, coupon or stamp. So it is the amount that is redeemable which is the value, not the price of that voucher. Remember, price of the voucher is not the value. Say if Pantaloons sells me a voucher at 2000 rupees, means I give 2000 and buy a voucher. But the voucher entitles me to buy goods of 4000. Then the value of the voucher is 4000 and not 2000. So vouchers may be sold at a discount. So they are selling it to me at 2000. But it is redeemable against the goods worth 4000. Means I can buy goods of 4000. So value of the voucher will be 4000. So redeemable against. Value of the goods redeemable against. Means how many goods you can buy out of it. That is the value. Understood? Simple. And then point number 7 means subsection 7. Sub rule 7. The value of taxable services provided by such class of service providers as may be notified by the government on the recommendation of the council as referred to in para 2 of schedule 1 of the said act between distinct persons as referred to in section 25. Distinct means Farooqa class has 2 branches. Where input tax credit is available shall be deemed to be nil. Now this is of basically no value from exam point of view, but what it means I'll tell you, that the government can prescribe the types of or class of services or service providers, you can say, where the value will be taken as nil if they are entitled for input tax credit. Now I'll explain the logic behind this, what it means. FHC Nagpur and FHC Delhi are distinct persons. Okay, they are distinct persons. Now I am supplying goods from here to here. I mean to say not goods but service. This is for service. So I am supplying a service from my FHC Nagpur to FHC Delhi office. Okay, so likewise there are so many people having distinct entities everywhere. They have the same PAN registration in different states. So they are called as distinct persons. And here the point which is mentioned here, para 2 of schedule 1. Para 2 of schedule 1 is applicable where it is given as part of furtherance of business. If the service is given in the course of business, then schedule 1 para 2 applies. Okay, so I'm giving service to my Delhi office. Now in this case, if ITC is available, then what happens? Let's see. If IT is available, then say when I give the service, I'll pay tax here. So here we pay tax of 1000, but here the credit can be taken. So if I'm paying tax from one hand and taking credit from the other hand, what difference does it make? Because ultimately I'm going to set off this 1000 against the output tax here. I will set it off. So if I set off, then ultimately I'm going to save 1000 there. Means I'll pay 1000 here and I will save 1000 here. Does it make any difference? No, it's just procedural problem. So government says, okay, we will exempt this. So value will be considered as nil. So value will be considered as nil means that no tax will be charged here and no credit will be taken here. And when this FHC Delhi gives its output services or goods or whatever, at that time we will charge tax without credit. So government's revenue will remain same. So that is what the value will be deemed to be nil. But this is only for the class of services which the government will notify. For others, they will have to carry out this process. You have to pay tax here, then you have to take credit there, and then you can set off. Right, so that was 32. Interesting one, long one. So we'll take a break here and then we'll continue with analysis of section 15 in the next lecture.